Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how you can add beads to your macrame leaf design that I've already showed you how to do in a previous tutorial, and this is how it can end up looking. So we got our leaves there, and then I just added some small black seed beads along the outside of every single one, and then some larger seed beads within each leaf as well, a different colour on each. That's just how you can add your beads. You don't have to do these. You can just use one of them. It's completely up to you. But in this tutorial I'm going to show you how you can add your beads. And in the original tutorial I just showed you how to make the basic leaf design. So this is it without the beads on it. So I'm going to refer back to this tutorial to learn how to make the leaves. And then in this one I'm going to show you how to add the beads. So you can obviously see the different look. And again, this is another one I did as well. I did a headband with the same yellow cord. And you can see here the different look you get just by adding beads into it. It's a completely different look. And obviously depending what beads you use and what colours, you can obviously achieve different looks as well. So if you want to learn how you can add beads to your macrame leaf design here, then keep watching. So these are all the things that we're going to need. Now the cord that I'm using here is a 0.9mm in thickness, and it's just a regular nylon cord. I'm working with a nice warm yellow colour here because I thought it would be quite nice, and then combining it with the colours of the beads that I'm using as well. And what I actually have here is two different sizes of beads. Now this isn't specific, you can use many different sizes and shapes for that matter of beads, and it will depend on your cord, because you need to make sure your cord can go through the holes on whatever beads that you're using. But also what I would suggest is try to not use beads that are too large, because then they might not fit within the actual design. So in this case what I'm using here, all these coloured ones are all 8/0 seed beads. The reddish, the greenish and the bluish colour as well. And I'm using one colour per leaf just to kind of mix it up for my design. You can also do whatever you want with your colours. The last one out here is the black one, and that's an 11/0 seed bead. And this one I'm actually going to use around the outside of every single leaf just to kind of frame it in. But like I said, this tutorial is more just to show you how and where you can add whatever beads you want to use. So you can use multiple different colours, obviously, whatever you want to, and also different sizes and even shapes as well. So let's get the things together and let's get started. So what I've already done is got myself in a position where I'm going to start making my very first leaf here. Now if you're unsure how to do this, I have the other tutorial like I mentioned where I make the basic bracelet with just the leaves without adding the beads into it. So I'm going to refer back to that, put a link in the description box below so you can have a look there first on how to get to this point and make the basic of this bracelet. But in this one I'm just going to show you how to add the beads. So what I then also have ready is some of my beads here. So the first colour that I'm going to be working with, I'm just choosing the blue one here, of my 8/0 seed beads. And then the other colour as well I'm going to use for every leaf, the black ones. And those are the 11/0 seed beads that I'm going to use kind of framing the leaf. So we need to have the beads ready here so we can add them in as we go. So I'm going to start out making the leaf in the exact same way that I showed in the previous tutorial. The basics of making the leaves here is the exact same, we're just adding beads along the way. So I take my first cord out of the way, that's coming down like this. This one is the holding cord throughout the whole piece. And then grab the very next one, lay it across all the others here, and that's going to be my holding cord for my first row. Take the very next cord coming underneath and go around the cord, back through the loop. So you get, it loops around your holding cord like this. Looks like a 6, and then we tighten this up underneath kind of the backbone of the bracelet that we already made. So this row that we're making now goes right underneath that, and we need to make a double half hitch. So I'm making another one here around the cord and back through the loop and tighten just like this. And I always pull my holding cord up a little bit to make sure the rows get nice and tight. And then what we need to do is move all the way across using every single cord that's coming underneath there, one at a time, making sure all the time we're grabbing the very next one so they're not crossing over each other until we get to the very end and have no more cords left to use basically. So move all the way across like this, making your double half hitches, making sure that this row is nice and tight underneath. And then once we get to the end here, make a last double half hitch with the very last working cord. And then that's this full row. So now to make the next one, we're beginning the next row here before we add in any beads. So I'm just going to take out the very first cord again. So the very first working cord that we used, bring that out to the side. So every time you make a new row, you're gradually taking out one cord, so we're getting less and less to work with. And then you want to start with the very next one. So basically the second cord on this row in, bring that over all the others and start doing the same thing. Make your double half hitches with the ones coming underneath one at a time to build the very next row here, straight underneath the previous one. Like this. Take the very next one all the way to the end here. So using all the same working cords that we used before in the previous row, making sure it's nice and tight underneath the previous row as well. The last one of the working cords here, just like this. And what we have now is this row underneath the previous one. Now what we need to do as well is bring this previous holding cord, the one that was a holding cord in the previous row, into it as well. And normally without beads I would just bring it down, but this is then where we need to add our very first bead. So then what I'm doing is grabbing one of my black ones, so the 11 seed beads, putting it onto this cord that was the holding cord in the previous row, like this, push it all the way down so it sits like that. And then what can help as well, what you'll find is if you kind of just use a lighter here or something else to quickly singe the end just a second or two and then roll it between your fingers, you get little points, and almost like a little needle it's going to act like. It's going to make it a lot easier to get through your beads, especially the very smallest ones here if you're using that. Obviously be careful when you're doing that because it is hot when you're working with it. But then now that I have the bead in place there, what I'm going to take is the holding cord that I was just using again. So in the row that we're just in the middle of making now, I'm going to bring that cord where I put the bead onto, into that, bring it underneath and just bring it down so it acts like one of the working cords. And then make a double half hitch again with that. So you're looping around your holding cord there, so you get your 6. And then tighten that. And then as you tighten, you can see the bead is going to sit right there, just at the end of the previous row. So that was now this row that we just finished. So we need to do the same thing again, go back to the very beginning, take the very first cord of all these ones that you just used, put it out to the side, put it away. Like I said, we're taking out one every time we make a row. Grab the very next one, so the second one in, and bring that over all the others. And then now you can see we have less cords to work with than we did in the first row, because we're taking one out every time. And then to build this row, do the same thing. Grab the very next one that's a working cord from underneath, build up this row, use your 2 working cords that you have from the previous row here until we reach that very last one. So this one that was the holding cord from the previous row, what I'm going to do again is add one of my black beads, the 11 O's, onto that. And again make sure I push that all the way up to the very end there, so it won't go any further. And then we just take that, bring it underneath the holding cord that we're using now in the current row, and then make a double half hitch with that. So just like this. And then again you can see that bead is going to sit right at the end of the previous row, just nicely, and then it's slowly starting to build up. So then what you need to do is continue doing this, building one row after the other, every time you take out the very first one, so you have one less to work with, and use the next one as your holding cord. So do this until you don't have any more really to make enough rows, and every time remember to add that bead to the previous row as well. And then once you've done this, that's going to be the 1/2 of the leaf. And I'll show you in detail as well how to do this, so if you're a bit unsure on how to finish this off, I'm going to show you that in the previous video that I've already linked to in the description box. So I've now reached this point where when I take the first cord away for this set of cords that I'm working with now, I've only got the 2 left. So the one that was the last working cord in the previous row, and then the one in this case that was a holding cord. So I'm doing the same again on that holding cord. I'm just adding my bead, pushing it all the way down, and then grabbing this working cord from the previous row. So that's the second one in on the ones we're using now, bringing that over, and just use the holding cord from the previous row. That's now the working cord where I've just added the bead onto. and just make your double half hitch with that. Just like that, because that's the last row that we're going to be able to make, because obviously now you can see we've run out of cards to use to make any more rows with. So now this is then the 1/2 of the leaf, and then what I need to do now is to make it a bit easier to work with. I'm just going to reposition my piece here, because we now need to start working to build up the other side. So you can just reposition your piece with your pins on your board whenever you need to. Always best to make it as easy to work with as possible. So just like this. So now we need to start building up our rows again, moving down the other side. So to do that, this one that's kind of sticking out from that very last row was the holding cord. That part right up here is going to be the very tip of the leaf. So what I also just want to do is add a bead onto that. So onto this holding cord, just as if we were making a new row. The difference is now we need to start basically working the opposite direction. So that means this one was the holding cord for the previous row, and we're working in the direction where we'll bring them over to the right. Now what we need to do is take the same holding cord, it's going to be the holding cord again for this next row, and then bring that back the opposite direction, so towards the left. And then the one that was the working cord in the previous row there, so the very one we just made the one double half hitch, is again going to be the working cord. So we just basically swapped hands now. So what I need to do is again make my double half hitch around the cord and through the loop. So like this. So on this side, in this direction, we'll get an opposite 6, reverse 6, tighten that all the way up here. So basically that bead is a bit of a stopper. Also, it's going to be the very tip of the leaf. And one more to make it a double. So basically the row that we're making now is exactly the same as the very last one we did on the other side, where we only have the very one double half hitch. So now to make the next row, so that's going to be the next one down on the opposite side, is going to be equivalent to that. So this time we need to add in a cord every time we make a row, whereas the other side we took one out. So also basically the cords keep swapping jobs as well, from holding cord to working cord. So what we've got to remember as well, over here what we did was add a bead each time we made a new row to the holding cord from the previous row. That's where we added the bead. This time we've got to remember to do it as we start making the next row here. So this is the working cord from the previous row. I need to add my bead onto this, push it all the way down, so you can see it's going to sit in the same place as it does on the opposite side, and then bring that over again towards the left now, because we're working in the opposite direction. And then this, the one that was the holding cord from the previous row, bring that underneath and do a double half hitch around that holding cord, and then tighten that. And as you can see, that bead is now sitting in the exact same space as the other side, just like this, building up this row. And now what we need to do is take one of our cords from the other side that we took out. So grab the very first one that you run into from the opposite side there. We need to start adding this into building up these rows now. But this is then where I also want to start adding in my other beads. So in my case, the blue ones here that I'm using, these are going to be running down the center of the leaves. So I'm taking one of those, adding it onto that cord that's actually coming from the other side. So from the row on the opposite side there, let that fall all the way down into the middle there, so it won't go any further. Now bring this cord that we just put that bead onto underneath the holding cord in the row that we're building on this side. Use that working cord that's coming underneath with that blue bead on it. Make a double half hitch around that holding cord, and then tighten that underneath the previous knot, just like this. And then what's going to happen is we're going to trap this blue bead in place as well. And that's how we're going to have our beads running down the center of the leaves. So to start building the next row here, we're going to go back to the beginning of the previous row. So remember, this is in the very first working cord from that row. Remember, we always need to add on one of our black beads here, in my case the 11 O's. Let it drop all the way down there. And what you can do as well, now you got a bit of work done, is use some more pins to kind of fasten it all in place. Makes it a little bit easier to work with. So let that drop all the way down, and then take this working cord from the previous row that's now turning into the holding cord for this row, over all the others, use the very first working cord coming from underneath, and then make a double half hitch. And then you tighten that, then that bead is going to sit in place. Just like that. And then we need to grab the holding cord from the previous row, so the last one you kind of have on this side, bring it underneath as well. And then make a double half hitch. Just like this. So now we don't have any more cords left on this side, so to make this row equivalent to the one on the other side, we need to again bring in one of our cords. So the very next one from the other side that you run into is what we need to use now. And again, this, we need to take one of our blue beads in my case and add that onto that cord. So again, let it drop all the way down till it's sitting right there in the middle, can't go any further. And then make sure it comes underneath the holding cord in this row that you're building on this side, and then make a double half hitch with that working cord. And as you tighten that, now this bead is going to sit nice and tight in place in the middle of the leaf there. So just like this. So we basically now just want to keep doing this, building up the other half of the leaf there, making sure, go back to the very first working cord from the previous row every time you start making a new one. Always remembering to add in that bead on the outside there before you start using it as a holding cord by bringing it over. And then as you can see on this side, every row is getting larger by adding in that one cord every time. And we're getting more to work with. And then just build it up like all the other times using all your cords here until you use the last one on this side, where you then need to take one from the other side to finish off the row. So the last one here. And then to make it equivalent to the other side, we need to take the very next one we run into there from the other side, that's kind of going to cross over the middle. Add, in my case, the blue bead onto that, and then just keep repeating the same steps until you've made all the rows that you need to make to complete this half of the leaf, and you used up all these cords that we took out along the way. So I've now reached the point where I've made the other half of the leaf so it's equal now, and I've added all my beads to the sides and the middle there. So what we reach now is the point we need to make the very last row. So again, I'm just putting on my little bead there, the 11-0, on the very first one that's going to go across and be the holding cord for this row to begin with. And then the same thing, start with the very first working cord here that's coming underneath, make your double half hitch. Now working towards the middle there, the spine of the bracelet again, to be able to move on and make the next leaf. Make a double half hitch like this, and then what we need to do now is start bringing all these working cords into it as well. That's what we're doing in this very last row. So instead of just leaving it and moving on to the next one, I need to bring it in with my holding cord and bring it across. So basically what we're going to have now is 2 holding cords, and then you want to grab the very next ones coming underneath. It's going to be your working cord. Bring it around with double half hitch around both of these holding cords now, and then tighten that once more to make it double, just like this, still making sure that your rows are straight underneath each other. And we're going to do the same again, bring that working cord you just used in with your other holding cord, so we now have 3. Grab the very next working cord coming from underneath, make a double half hitch around all 3 of these holding cords, because in this way we're bringing all the cords into the center of the bracelet again. Otherwise it would just be hanging down here. Again, bring the working cord you just used into the holding cords. Grab the very next working cord. And keep doing this until you've brought in all the cords here. Bring that in as well. And you can see this row is then building up nicely. And we're getting all these cords in towards the center of the bracelet. Like this, the last one. So that is now this row in place. We build up and we brought all the cords in towards the center again here. So now what we can do is just reposition this all again, because then we need to kind of put it together here because we still have these two loose ones, whereas they're kind of separated as you can see down there. So to fix that, I'm just going to reposition this again, make it easier to work with. So just put your pins in wherever you need to, just like that. And then what we need to do is bring it all together here. So this one that we left out at the very beginning of the leaf, so the very first row that we made basically, this is the one that we used throughout to make all these hitches. So basically make the spine of the bracelet. We're going to keep doing that. So what we need to do is make sure it comes underneath the others. And right now it's pointing this way, so basically towards the leaf. What I'm going to do is bring it underneath this single cord that it's attached to and out towards that side. And then all the others I'm going to bring them together here. Then this one I'm going to make my next double half hitch with. And then tighten that. And this is exactly the same that I showed you in the one where I just showed you the technique without adding the beads, and just basically to close off the leaf here, and then be able to continue until you want to come down and reach the point where you want to make the next one. So you keep using this one, make your double half hitches from side to side, and then there you basically have your first leaf where you've added in your beads. And then it looks like this. Then obviously you can do it however you want to, use whatever beads you want to. I just thought it would look nice with small ones on the outside here, with black ones so it kind of frames the leaf, sorry. And then you have your coloured ones in the centre there. So that's how you add your beads. You can also do only the outside ones or only the middle ones. That's completely up to you. I just want to show you in this tutorial how you can add beads to this bracelet. So I've now continued adding my beads onto all my leaves there until I reach the length that I want the bracelet to be, roughly. And then this is the pattern that I've ended up with. So because I chose these colours for my beads, so the black ones around the outside of each leaf, so it kind of frames them. And then on each leaf I have a different colour. So I have my three main colours there, the blue, the pink and then the green. And then kind of just alternate them to get this pattern. So you can see depending on what beads and what colours of beads you use, depending with your cord as well, you can get completely different looks. So all that's left to do now, when you reach this point where you're done with the length that you need, we need to then finish off the ends so we can turn it into a bracelet. Now I have a few different ways to do that. I have a tutorial that shows how you can do that in a couple of different ways. I'm just going to use some cord ends for this one, but you can have a look at that video if you need a bit of help with that. So I've now finished off the ends here with my cord ends and attached my extender chain and my clasp as well. And then we have the finished bracelet. Just use your clasp. And then there we go. And it looks like this. So obviously, like I said, you can use whatever beads and colours as well. This was just to show you how you can place them. So this is how you make this, adding your beads into the leaf design. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. And thank you very much for watching. Hello everyone, today I want to show you how to make these macrame bracelets, and these are the beaded version of my intertwining herringbone macrame bracelet that I did last year, and they look like this. So I've just made these two examples, so it's the exact same technique as you can see, but because of the different just cord that I've used here, you get two very different looks, and even the beads are the same ones as well. So I've used a white satin cord and then a black one, because I thought that would be a nice neutral background colour for the silver